it doesn't mean I have equilibrium in the financial market. It's possible that in the financial market I have S lower than investment plus bonds. Okay? Third question. Let me erase here. Third question. D is equal to what? D is equal to consumption plus G plus X minus M. Question 3 has to do with D. And question 4 has to do with refinements. Public or private. Okay. First hint. First hint is that refinance total is equal to M minus 6. But then refinancement can split into public, and this goes to the states, and private, and this goes to the banks. It can be one public only, private only, or private and public. 3 possibilities. Only public, only private, public, and private. Well, technically there is a 4th possibility, no refinancement. Okay? Now, how do I calculate which is public, which is private? For public refinancement, for public, I look at the state. What enters to the state? What is entering? Taxes plus bonds. What goes out? What goes out? G plus F plus YS. If this is happening, then the difference is public refinements, which means that public RF is equal to T plus, to G plus YS plus F minus T minus B. Private refinance is equal to investment price plus bonds minus S. The two of them, if you add this and this, is equal to M minus X. And here you have everything. Okay?
tí thì check.
Mấy up lên like được nhỉ?
Được.
Bây giờ mất quá thì tạo mẹ rồi mail mới.
So, what you have here
Up lên YouTube rồi.
is
Ủa mình YouTube của ai nó có tới 4
what you
80
have
vậy,
here
80
is an
280
image
vậy.
of the whole economy. Imagine you are a bank manager. You are a bank manager. How do you analyze the fact that the state has an important public deficit? If the state has an important public deficit, what will the state do? If the state has an important public deficit, the state will try to reduce public deficits. How can they do it? If they don't want to change their policies, if the state has public deficits, and the state doesn't want to change T, F, G, or YS. What will happen? Then the state will try to find money. Where will the state find money? Will find money through the bonds. The state will use bonds. What is happening when you have government bonds? Government bonds usually have an interest rate which is a bit higher than the bank interest rate. So households prefer buying government bonds instead of putting their money in the bank. Now, if this happens, what does it mean for the bank? You're the manager. This means that people, let me erase here. Let me erase here. What does this mean? This means that people have savings. The bank wants to take these savings. These savings are supposed to go to the bank. But instead of going to the bank, where do these savings go? They go to the state through the bonds. So there is less savings for the banks. Okay? So the banks know that if they want to make loans, the banks must find money abroad. Why? Because in the economy, the state takes the money. Okay? So, all this information you get here is very important in terms of strategy. Okay? If you know, for example, that the state has a public deficit, and the state decides to increase T. If the state decides to increase T, what is happening? If the state increases T, then you know that if T increases, then consumption will drop. So if consumption drops, then Y drops, that's GDP. If Y drops, then probably investment will drop. And if investment drops, this means less loans. So, all the time, the information you have here is important to make decisions. Why do we make this course? We don't make this course to make drawings on the table. We make this course in order to understand how a future manager, this is what you're going to become, future managers, how a future manager must be able to analyze macroeconomic environment. If you become a firm manager or a bank manager, you cannot manage your firm by just looking at your firm. It's not possible. If you do that, everything will go wrong. You must manage your firm or your bank by looking what's happening outside. But if you look what is happening outside, you must understand how things work. So you are obliged to understand macroeconomic equilibrium. Okay. Now, once again, imagine you are a manager. Imagine that you have understood all this, what we are doing here. Will you find all this somewhere in internet or in the state accounts? No. You will never find what we have put here together, but you will find something else, national accounts. So can I erase here? So, what we had, chapter 1, cycle, we call that the circuit. Chapter 2, national accounting. So, you will never find this sort of figures we made. But what you will find is national accounts. And it's public. Everyone can go and see the national accounts of all the countries. Vietnam, Thailand, China, Cambodia, France. Now, what is the idea of national accounts? The idea is, let's take now what we've seen there. What did we have? We had the firms, we had the households, we had the banks, we had the state. Well, you do have some other agents that I didn't put here to make it simple. For example, you have insurance companies. And you have private associations, cultural associations, sport associations, etc., etc. So let's take the example for firms. What did we have in the figure just before in the circuit? We had for firms things going out, Y, and things coming inside. Consumption, G. Basically, you also have exports. Okay. So you have things going in and going out. What did you have for households? For households, you had Y coming in, you had YS coming in, you had T going out, you had F going in, you had S going out, you had C going out. What did you have for the state? For the state, you had T going in, B going in, F going out, G going out, WS going out. Okay? This is what we had just before. So, what does national accounting do? Well, national accounts, you put in tables what goes in and what goes out. So in a very easy way, if I take the example for the firms, let's take the firms. If I take here firms, then I will have here passive, this is active, and so what you have here is, you have incoming arrows, and here you have outgoing arrows. For example, for firms, production is an incoming arrow. It corresponds to consumption plus investment plus wages is an outgoing arrow. If I take households, what's coming in for households? Wages are coming in. Subsidies are coming in. Taxes go out. Consumption goes out. So the idea is to put all these arrows in a table. Okay? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 big tables. Now, it's important to understand something. Let's take the state and let's take the households. Let's take taxes. In the households table, what are the taxes? Let's put it differently, not taxes. Let's put here, it's easier. Expenses and resources. So R for resources and E for expenses, expenditure. So, for the households, what is taxes? Expenses or resources? Of course, households pay taxes. But for the state, what is for the state taxes? Resources or expenses? Resources. So every arrow will be written twice. Once as an expense for households, and if I go here to the state, and once as resource for the state. So every arrow appears twice. Once as a resource and once as an expense. And this is what makes equilibrium, because all the arrows appear once in expenses and one in resources. Okay? Is it clear? Okay. So, of course, we can have one huge table. Now, when we made the drawings, we have just put some operations. But of course, there are too many. In real life, in real economy, there are not just 5 arrows, there are thousands of arrows. So we can have a huge table where we put incoming and outgoing arrows. But this is not very practical, and we lose information. So we take this big table and we split it in 5 small tables. So what we have here, we have 5 tables instead of 1. The first one is production table. Resources, expenses. What you find here is goes in, goes out. The difference between the two of them is the added value. So AV is added value. The second table is operation table. It's linked to production. So very, very, very important. Let's not forget, you must take this information here and put it there. Many students forget. So this is added value. And then you have what goes in, what goes out. And the results are P, the profits. The third table, the most difficult one, is income. So what I must not forget is to take P and put it there. And here I also put P. Then I have what goes in. And here, what goes out. And the result, oh, I can even put it like that, wait, is the net income, YN. YN is the net income. Then I have the table of use of income. And once again, I must not forget to take this information and put it here. YN. And usually there is only one operation here, consumption, and the results are savings. And the last one, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, I put the last one here, is capital. And of course, I need to take this information here, S, and put it up there. So this is savings. And here I have what goes in, what goes out. And in this table, there are two possible solutions. The first one is here. And this is financial capacity. The other one is here, NF, and that's a need of financing. It can be either, not the two, of course. So, let's see it once again from the beginning. What you have here is production table. What do you see in production table? Basically, in production table, you see the value. Here you'll have the value of production. And here you're going to have, but I'll show it in a more detail. Here you'll have intermediate consumption. And this will give you the added value. This will give you the added value for firms. This will give you the added value for households. This will give you the added value for banks, etc., etc. What is the advantage? The advantage is that if you only have the production tables, you know that the sum of added values is equal to what? To the GDP. So just by having the production tables, you can calculate the GDP. So it's very interesting. Then you go to operation tables. Operation is what has to do with production. But it's not production, it's not intermediate consumption. But it's everything that has to do with consumption. Wages, taxes for production, subsidized for production. They enter here. And what they will show you is the profit. So imagine you're, once again, a bank manager. This interests you a lot because it shows whether the firms in your economy make profits or not. So it's very interesting to know whether really the economy, the firms are making profits or not. Then you come to the third one. It's the most difficult because it has to do with all the incomes that come in and incomes that come out. For example, when you pay insurance premiums, it is here. When you have dividends paid by the firms, they are here. When you pay interest rates, it's here. So it's everything that has to do with the income of the economic agent. Firms, households, banks, state, insurance. Income taxes, it's here. Then you go to the fourth one. And here you have just one operation. Use of income. You have the net income before, and you see what is the part of net income that goes to consumption. We have seen that already when we made our drawing. Do you remember? We had seen that YN is equal to consumption plus savings. And so here you get the savings. And the last one has to do with investment. It's capital. So you see what goes in and what goes out. Now, for all these accounts, the result is always on the left, which means that resources are more important than expenses. If you get a result this side, then you made something wrong. The result is always on this side for 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you have production P, operation O, income I, use of income. The result is always on the left. Which means that resources are more important than expenses. For the last one, capital, well, the result can be on the left or on the right. If it's on the left, this means that resources are more important than expenses. And you have a capacity of finance, you have a financial capacity. If the results are on the right, this means that you spend more money than your resources. And this means you have a need of finance.
Cái nào? Y trên là chưa y nữa.
Đây là bên phải mà nó ở bên trên này.
Cái chữ chỗ này income phải không?
Không, chỗ xe bên này. Cái gì xe
như từ sâm. Use này.
sao thầy nói resource auto bên trái
Okay, so if you
thì kết quả của cái việc sử dụng là có thể một là mày tiết kiệm, hai là mày dùng mày tiêu phí cần sâm.
you understand
Cái bản
that in a closed economy, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 agents, right? Firms, households, bank, state, insurance, private association. In a closed economy, the sum of capacity of finance is equal to the sum of the need of finance. Let's imagine, for example, that firms had a need of finance. Let's imagine that the state have a need of finance. Let's imagine that insurance have a need of finance. Then the need of finance of firms, of state and insurance is equal to the capacity of households, banks, and private associations. So in closed economy, you have this. But in an open economy, what will happen is that most often the sum of need of finance is higher than the sum of capacity of finance. So to have equilibrium, what do? You have sum of need of finance is equal to the sum of capacity of finance, please, plus RF. It's exactly what we've done. NF is need of finance. Guys, when we had seen the circuit, the cycle, what did we found? We found that the state often had more expenses than resources, right? So there was a need to finance the state. How did we finance the state? By external debt. In other examples, okay. In other examples, we found that the banks had the need of finance. How do the banks finance their need of finance? Thanks to RF. In a closed economy, there is no external loan. If the economy is closed, if there is no rest of the world, to have equilibrium, what must happen? To have equilibrium, it's mandatory that the capacity of finance of one is equal to the need of finance of the others. You cannot find money anywhere else. If there is no rest of the world, this is not possible. If there is no rest of the world, if the country is closed, no exchange with the rest of the world, this is what happens. But if you open to the rest of the world, of course, this happens, but maybe the GDP is very low. This is what happened in Vietnam. In Vietnam, before the opening, before the Doi Moi, that was the situation. But of course, GDP was very low. Then Vietnam opened. They made the reforms. How you call that? Doi Moi, is correct? Doi Moi? You understand what I want to say. So after the reforms, Vietnam opened its economy. GDP went up. But of course also the need of finance is much more important than the capacity of finance. So where does Vietnam find the money? From abroad. So the debt of Vietnam increases. Clear or not clear? No? Sorry? One more time, okay. Just the last one or everything? Everything. Okay. It's a pity we don't have another one. Okay. That's it. Do you recall what we've done just previously, this morning? The figure with the arrows from firms to households, etc. Okay, everyone agrees to that? The thing is that what we've done this morning is how the economy works in a very simple way. But if you try to find what we've done this morning, you cannot find it. This is something we do in course. But if you're a manager and you say, let's see how it works, you will never find this figure with banks, households, state, and the arrows. This doesn't exist. But what exists is national accounts. This exists. Now, what is national accounts? National accounts is exactly the figure we made, but instead of having a drawing with arrows, you just have for each agent, the firms, the households, banks, the state, you have all the operation, all the arrows coming in, going out. So you can put all this in one table, like that. What goes in, what goes out. Now, to make it, to give more information, this big table, we cut it in 5. Production, duration, income, use of income, and capital. So we cut it in 5. It's always one big table cut in 5, but you must not forget every time to take the resources and put it back here. So this is the result, you must put it here. This is the result, you must put it here. Okay? You must just not forget to do it. It's a technical. Okay. Now, in a closed economy, I will erase here, okay? In a closed economy, look, don't write, look. In a closed economy, I have the firms, the households, the banks, and the state. So firms give Y to the households, the state gives YS to the households, households pay taxes, state gives subsidies, households make savings, banks make investments, households make consumption, and firms make public expenses. In a no rest of the world. In this closed economy, it must work all the time, right? It must go all the time around. So, in this closed economy, you don't have the rest of the world. Now, imagine that there is public deficit. Imagine that the state has public deficit, that the state spends more money than what they get. How can they finance this? They cannot finance this by the rest of the world because it's a closed economy. The only way to finance this is to find money from the other agents. Okay? You must find solutions inside the economy. So at the end, what you have, imagine that the state here is so small. Imagine that the state has a need of finance of 100. Imagine that the firms have a need of finance of 50. The only way to make equilibrium is to find, for example, imagine that the households have a capacity of finance of 120, and the banks have a capacity of finance of 30. So the sum of the need of finance is equal to the sum of the capacity of finance. It's not possible any other way. But when you open your economy to the rest of the world, when you open the economy to the rest of the world, this is not necessary anymore. If you open your economy to the rest of the world, Okay, so if I add here the rest of the world, then what can happen is that the state has a need of finance of 100. The firms have a need of finance of 100. The households have a capacity of finance of 150. And the banks, they also have a need of finance of 50. Now here, the global need of finance is higher than the global capacity of finance, if you add all this. Where will we find the money? Where will we find the money? We will find the money in the rest of the world. So the rest of the world will give us money, so NF becomes equal to CF plus RF. Okay? Now, what is interesting is that this information you have.
Thì cho phép tính lại chia trong kia.
You just type
bằng nhau.
Vietnam's national account,
Hay là quanh trường tới.
then you can find it.
Tức là cái này thì yếu rồi thì yếu thành
Ý là mấy cái bảng này hả? Ừ.
Okay.
Cái đó có bản này. Thầy không hiểu thì cái này cái đó
Okay, make the pictures that you want. Tell me when it's okay. Yes.
sau mua là một chiếc gì đó, sau một chiếc thì đi ra là lên tới đó.
Quá đẹp ba luôn, bỏ tiền ra để vận hành mà. Thì nó sẽ tức mà đem đồ đất tự
Không,
mà.
active value là cái phần giá trị mình được tạo thêm, nghĩa là từ cái việc mày sản xuất thì mày tạo nên được giá trị gì đó, chứ active value đó
This is
nó là kết
added
quả
value.
của sản xuất.
You don't say what it is.
Go out là kết quả,
I will explain.
mà ta không hiểu tại sao nó nằm ở cái phần scan với result là không hiểu là tại
I
sao.
will explain. I haven't got this.
Xong rồi đến cái hoạt động là
We're all right.
Là đi vào á là add được value
So,
đi vào cái operation fund.
I will get to
dùng
this.
cái khoản tiền đó để
Là để tiến sĩ
So,
động rồi xong tạo ra.
last information before we start analyzing. We'll take an example. Last information. The firms, the banks, and the insurance companies only have 4 accounts. They don't have use of income accounts. So the firms, the banks, and the insurance don't have this account. You go from net income to capital. Why? Because firms, banks, or insurance companies are not consuming. On the other hand, households, state, and private associations have 5 accounts. The one we've seen here, POIUC, while here they only have POIC. Okay? Good. So this is the general idea. Let's now make an example to understand exactly what it is. Ready? I can start? Good.
Làm gì rồi chưa?
Ghi cái gì nữa?
Làm gì mới
Tổng đó tổng CF bằng F cộng với đó tổng CF cộng với F. Đúng rồi ghi đó đi. Cộng với F.
không? Đang ghi xét trường hợp.
Suy lên là tổng là F. Đó bằng CF cộng với F.
Okay, let's start with the firms, because it's only 4 accounts. I will not have time for that. Firms. Let's start with the production account. Resources, expenses. So, what you will find in resources in the production account is, of course, production. Production of goods and services. Let's say for a value of, let's put 6,000. What you will find as expenses in this first table is IC. So IC is intermediate consumption. Let's say for a value of 1,000. What is intermediate consumption? Take this bottle of water. There is a firm producing this bottle of water. Is the firm, it's Pepsi. Pepsi is producing this bottle of water. So, I don't know what's the value of this bottle of water anyhow. So what Pepsi does, Pepsi buys water. Pepsi buys plastic. And Pepsi buys, that's also plastic, maybe some color. So Pepsi buys water, plastic, and color. And they produce the bottle. The difference between the value of the plastic, color, and the water that Pepsi paid and the value of this bottle is the added value. So, added value here will be 5,000. AV for added value. To take this table here, take this table. The firm that produced this table, what have they done? They bought wood, they bought metal, and they made the table. So that maybe they paid 100 for wood, 100 for metal, but they sell the table 500. What is the added value? 300. So what you have here is the added value. Okay? to production account is rather easy. Then we go to operation account. So first thing, I must not forget to put here the added value, 5,000. What other type of expense of resources do I have here? I can have SI, let's say 500. So SI is subsidized for production. So sometimes the state gives some subsidies to some firms to produce. If the state considers that this firm has an important activity, then they might give them some subsidies. Usually, for example, farming firms, agricultural firms, get some subsidies of production. What are the expenses? These are the expenses that are related to production. So the most important expense here is, of course, wage. So W goes for wages. And let's say that wages is 2,000. And the firm must also pay production taxes. So this is subvention of production. Sorry, I put ISP. And these are production taxes. Production taxes. Let's say that this is equal to 300. So the profit is equal to this minus this. That will give you 3,200. This is the profit of all the firms of your economy. This is the profit for all the firms of your economy. So if you're a bank manager, you want to know what is the behavior of the firms in your economy. Then we go to the third table. Now, as I said, this one is the most difficult. Resources, expenses. So first you put profits, 3,200. Let's see for first the expenses. What do firms pay? They pay interest rates. So interest rates, interests in it, not rates, interests. Let's say that they pay 500 as interest because firms made loans and now they must pay interest for the loans. The firms pay dividends. They pay dividends to the stockholders. Dividends. Let's say that the firms pay 500 as a dividends. What else do the firms pay? They pay insurance premiums. I will write it prem, okay? I will write it prem. That's insurance premiums. The firm wants to be sure that if an accident happens, they are insured. So let's imagine that this is equal to 300. What else do the firms pay? The firms pay taxes, income taxes. So I will write this TI, that's for income taxes. And let's imagine that this is equal to 500. What else do the firms pay? They pay Social Security. Social Security. So let's imagine that they pay 400 for Social Security. Okay? What do firms receive? Well, the firms, they receive insurance reimbursements. If an accident happened, the insurance company gives money to the firms. Insurance reimbursements. I will write it better. So here you had insurance premiums. Here you had insurance premiums, what the firms pay to insurances, and this is what they get back when there is an accident. What firms also take, sometimes the firms receive interest received. So I'll put here an R, and I will put here a P for interest paid. Paid. This is a P, and this is a R. And let's say that they receive 100 for interest received. So at the end, the available income is equal to $1,300, if I'm not mistaken. Available income is 1,300. Last table, so we only have 4. Capital. Resources, expenses. So available income is 1,300. The firms get some subsidized for investment. Subsidized investment. Let's say 200. Now the firms, what do they pay? What are the expenses? First of all, investments. So imagine that E, investment, is equal to 1,500. Then, what else do the firms pay? The firms may buy real estate. They may buy new land or new buildings to produce. So RE is real estate. And let's imagine they pay 500 for real estate. Last thing, the firms may have a change in their stocks, stock change. Now, the stocks are considered as an investment from previous year. Okay, it's strange, but this is the way it happens. So let's imagine that the firm had stocks and they sell some of their stocks and they have less stock this year. This might be positive, negative value, and this will be minus 200. Okay? So stocks, the variation of stocks can be positive or negative. If there are more stocks than the previous year, it's positive. If there are less stocks than the previous year, it's negative. What is the final result? The final result is this time here and mid of finance of 300. Okay? Are there any questions? Everything is clear? Okay. So what you must understand is that this is what you're going to find reproducing what we've done this morning. So all these operations correspond to arrows. Ingoing or out, incoming or outgoing arrows. Okay guys, so what we're going to do tomorrow, we're going to see the different accounts for, we'll try three, the firms, the households and the banks. And of course you're going to have exercises for each account. Okay? Good, thank you. So we're finished for today.